What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven, and in this video, we are going to be looking at the 68.9 patch notes for Storybook Brawl, March 2nd, 2022. First things first, we have a new cosmetic skin for Trash Panda Potion Master. I don't know why they're calling it a Trash Panda. Maybe that's I don't know. I mean, it's a raccoon, clearly, right? But this is Trash Panda Potion Master, and I do think that the hero art is cute as well. I do like some of these emotes. I'm not really sure when you'd use this one, but I guess a little bit of a nod to Rocket Raccoon, and maybe that's why they're not calling it a raccoon. I'm not sure, but I particularly like this kind of fiendish burglar raccoon, as well as the kind of happy celebratory one, but I can see using both of those ones. I'm not sure what emotion this one is supposed to be or when you'd use it, but it's a fun little reference as well. And there's a nice little Easter egg. So Potion Master, one of the things that makes Potion Master strong is you see more XP, you see more Turkish Delight, which is oftentimes referred to as Trash Can. So this whole skin is certainly for players that like to purchase XP on Potion Master, like myself. And that is going to have a nice additional animation as well, it seems like. And you can purchase this for 200 gems if you already have Potion Master, or if you don't already have Potion Master, you can pick it up for 300 gems or 200 gems plus 4,000 dust. So some options to pick that up. First thing we're going to be talking about as far as actual balance changes are changes to dwarves. We're starting with a reminder that Bossy was removed from the game a little bit ago. It was never officially mentioned in a patch notes. It was just kind of hot fixed and taken out of the game to tone down the overall power level of dwarves. So this isn't officially in a patch notes, but I have talked about that before in a video or two. One big change, though, that we are going to see is Dwarven Forge getting cut. And this is kind of an awkward one to talk about because Dwarven Forge isn't really getting cut. If you like one of the things that Dwarven Forge can do, it's getting changed to be Sky Castle. Sky Castle was always pretty underwhelming. Your princes and princes have +4/+4. Like, it's just like not worth a treasure typically ever. And Sky Castle now lets you quickly upgrade your princesses and princes. So I'll talk more about Sky Castle in a moment and how that is a little bit different, potentially a little bit better for the game as well. But for right now, let's talk about Dwarven Forge and just the idea of dwarves as a whole overall. I think that part of the text here is a little bit misleading because it says that now there's going to be, or it says there's Dwarven Forge led to too many upgraded dwarves too early. But of course that is now just getting shifted to princesses and princes. So I'm not sure if that is totally fair to say because Dwarven Forge isn't really getting cut. It's just getting changed. And I feel like overall, dwarves are kind of being looked at as like a boogeyman here, though Dwarven Forge was never like essential to the comp. And honestly, with the next change that we're going to see, this wasn't really going to be too big of a deal. I'll spoil it a little bit. Tweedled's getting moved from 4 to 5, which is a much bigger change. But what that also means is now there's just only Greedy as a tier 4 dwarf. One of the things that was kind of interesting about Dwarven Forge before is it provided an incentive in the early game where if you find this treasure, then you go into dwarves. But dwarves didn't really need that. So for that reason, I think that it is kind of cool to have that show up for princesses and princes, which do kind of need a little bit more oomph and a little bit more of a reason to try to make that comp work. So that's a pretty interesting angle there. And as far as the removal of Dwarven Forge, that is going to take away some high roll potential of like Horde Dragon, and I'll talk about why in a moment. But it won't really affect somebody like Wonder Waddle nearly as much because Wonder Waddle can just pick up that Sky Castle for the early game. But still, Dwarven Forge into Sky Castle is still going to be a pretty reasonable early game treasure, and now dwarves will just have a little bit harder of a time getting their triples, which means that maybe more players can play dwarves, I'm not sure, but this is the big change to talk about. So dwarves have really been strong ever since Tweedle has been made in its current iteration. So at one point, Tweedle was like a 3-cost unit, and it was just like a 4-1 that made a 1-4, and then it was a 2-3 that made it, or it was a 3-2 that made a 2-3, and then we saw it actually carry over the stats from Tweedledee into Tweedledum. And since it's done that, it has been pretty powerful because, and this is a little bit deceptive when you first read it, any pump that you give to Tweedledee applies 3 times. It is actually already a triply. Just as a basic example, let's say you give it +1 attack. And we're going to go with +1 attack from something like Dancing Sword as a simple example. Just a treasure that gives +1 attack. Kind of a confusing example because they're removing Dancing Sword. But Tweedledee would be a 7-1. It would resummon, excuse me, as a 1-7. And then that 1-7 would also get +1/+1. So it would be a 2-7. So you've now applied the Dancing Sword 3 times. Once to the original Tweedle, once to the Tweedledum's health, and then once to the Tweedledum's attack. So Tweedledee is kind of a triply, and that makes it just really powerful and really scale well with any stats that you put on it. Particularly some of the best stats that you can put on it are going to be like Sporko. Tweedledee always worked really well with Sporko and Madmim. So we are going to see Tweedledee get pushed later into the game. I think that that's definitely very good. Though Tweedle's also getting +2/+1. So +2/+1 again is really +3/+3. So it is a considerable amount more of stats because it's going to get those stats on the resummon as well. And it does give dwarves another tier 5 unit to play around with. I think that dwarves kind of are on the verge of getting into this weird territory where they're kind of losing some of their mechanical identity, which I don't really love. But this definitely takes a lot of power out of dwarves. One of the reasons that you'd go into dwarves is because if you can find that Tweedledee, that is just a huge power spike, and one of the best things that you can do is support it. Well, Fanny is a pretty incredible support. You're still going to have the strong early games with the Fanny and the Crafty, potentially into the Doubly. That's still gonna get you through the early game a decent portion of the time, but you're going to have to find some other things to do on tier 4 or potentially buy some trash cans, buy some XP, and try to get Tweedles faster. But one thing that I know that a lot of players have been pushing for is a reason to care about tier 5 units, and putting Tweedledee on tier 5 is going to make that stronger. Another really interesting thing about dwarves is now you really, really do not care about tier 4 treasures. It's going to be all about that tier 5 and some tier 6 treasures on dwarves. And Tweedledee, now you can triple Tweedledee and grab Staff of the Old Toad, grab Ambrosia, grab Hand of Midas, and ultimately that's going to be a pretty good use of your gold as dwarves. So I do think that this winds up working out okay, and would potentially still like to see some more mechanical identity to dwarves in the future. Also, we need a 7th dwarf. Though I guess Tweedledum counts as the 7th dwarf too, so maybe that works out. But I don't think dwarves are dead. Certainly going to be a lot less powerful, especially in the early game, which is probably a good thing. And now we're kind of moving to this point where dwarves used to be this really good early game comp, and there were better late game comps. We're basically at a point in Storybook Brawl where dwarves is one of the better end game comps. Not the best, nearly, not close to being the best, but yeah, didn't mean to say nearly. Meant to say not the best at all. But it is a really good early end game comp, and that's kind of a weird thing to say, but basically if you can get some XP and be ahead of the lobby, I think dwarves are really good, and I think that is now the new home for dwarves if you are purchasing some XP, but they are also good in that early game. So tiers 2 and 3, buy dwarves, level 4, find some XP, and then start buying some dwarves again, and that can be good for you. So let's move on now and talk about Sky Castle, and one of the big reasons that Sky Castle is different from Dwarven Forge. One is that princesses and princes care more about upgraded units. Specifically, Prince Arthur cares about upgraded units. So Sky Castle actually adds in some relevancy to the mechanical identity that princesses and princes are already playing around. And that's a good thing. But Sky Castle is secretly a lot less powerful than Dwarven Forge. And the reason for that is there's no tier 5 or tier 6 princesses or princes. All of your royals, all of your princesses and princes are going to be 2, 3, or 4 gold. Once you get to 5, all you can find is Lancelot. Once you get to 6, all you can find is Hercules. So that's really also going to take out the high roll potential of Sky Castle. Now, one thing I could also see if they really wanted to tone this back, or if they wanted to tone down Dwarven Forge, though it would be bad with Dwarven Forge because it would be anti-synergistic with Crafty, but you'd just say, you'd make this the Midas text. They only need 2, but they don't get treasures, right? So that's definitely a way that they can do it if Sky Castle winds up being too strong with Prince Arthur, which it might be. I think that this iteration of Sky Castle is going to be really good because it basically just makes you into a better King Midas. And King Midas is bad, so there's a lot of upside, but it's a King Midas where you could still triple Nyan Sea Terrors and still triple other things, and you're still going to get treasures from questing, and you're even still going to get treasures, or at the very least, you're still going to get 2 gold from skipping treasures when you are playing Sky Castle. So I think this iteration of Sky Castle is really, really quite good. Another thing with Sky Castle is I have often said that it's weird that the name is the same, even though I'm talking about Dwarven Forge right now. So I almost want to call it like Royal Forge, just so everybody's clear what I'm talking about, because Sky Castle is good. Sky Castle is not good. The old Sky Castle was generally not pretty good. But one of the strengths of princesses and princes is going to be the fact that they're all tier 4 units. Even Court Wizard, if you want that, is a tier 4 unit. Prince Arthur, Juliet, Nutcracker, though that's a questing unit. Riverwash Mermaid is technically a royal as well, but the big thing here is that you are going to try to combine your Prince Arthurs potentially already, and in doing so, you could get a Sky Castle. So it's really good if you're already in Royals, because it is a tier 4 treasure, so it's easy to pick up, and I think it is a really strong incentive to go into Royals. If you get Sky Castle on Wonder Waddle, I think you're going into Royals. However, like I said, it's going to be worse with Horde Dragon. Horde Dragon could really make a lot of work out of a Dwarven Forge. And Horde Dragon's not going to be able to do the same thing with Sky Castle because you can't grab those tier 5 and tier 6 royals. So I'll definitely be interested to see how Sky Castle plays out. My initial impression is that it's going to be stronger than Dwarven Forge because Arthur synergizes so well with Sky Castle, and I feel like that particular Royals comp is less exciting and more annoying than the Dwarves comp is going to be, because you grab the Sky Castle, then you just start rolling, you grab all of the Arthurs, and then you just have this built-in scaling in a way that is going to make it really tough for the other players in the lobby to compete with, and you get to deal a bunch of damage to the lobby as you are going through it. So we'll see how this one plays out, but certainly some different changes, and it's nice to have some incentive to push people into Royals, but it might just need like a slight downgrade on it, like you don't get treasures, or something that I've talked about with Midas before is like you get a little bit of coin, but like you auto skip, you know? You only need 2 copies to upgrade a prince or princess, but you auto skip the treasure. You get 1 or 2 coins from doing it, which kind of makes it a little bit weirder, more specific, but you got to think about balance as well, and we'll figure out how to word the text and stuff later. So this is what they're saying. Royals needed a boost. We'll see if it is too much. Certainly going to be good on Arthur. One thing I didn't talk about, it's also going to be pretty dang good on Miri. Quite good on Miri. So we'll see how that evolves going forward. Dancing Sword and Fountain of Youth are both getting changed from +1 stat to +1/+1, but caring about which units you're playing. So this is kind of an awkward change because these were very seldom picked up. They were basically picked up if you needed a little bit of stats, or I was finding myself mostly taking these two if I wanted to pump up my crafties. And of course now they'll still pump up crafties, but they'll make it more difficult to play other dwarves, which is maybe something that they're kind of considering, wanting you to play more synergistic comps and things like that. Overall, I think this is going to contribute to them getting picked up even less, but we'll see. Obviously, some heroes like Fairy Godmother or something could certainly see use out of it, but compare this to Crown, which takes some neutral things and changes their alignment as well. Yeah, certainly going to be a little bit awkward. I guess this impacts everything that's good, whereas Crown cares less about alignment and more just about if things are animals or not. But we'll see. I'm not predicting that this makes either of these treasures any bit better, though obviously it will make some things better on particular heroes, but not even by that much. Like, okay, your evil units have an additional 1 health compared to if you're just taking Dancing Sword. Is that better? I don't think so. Your good characters now have +1 attack. That one's probably a little bit better, but how much? Not that great, considering like you cared more about most good units. You cared... that's not true. Good units could definitely use the attack, but evil units don't necessarily need the health. So Dancing Sword, kind of awkward. Fountain of Youth, potentially better, though neither is super exciting at the moment. One change that we are going to see that is a pretty big one, let's zoom in again so that we don't spoil too much, but Oni King is moving from 6 down to 5, and that definitely makes sense. Oni King has not been the strongest, and even now we've seen a huge push for Jormungand, and Oni King is really nowhere to be found most of the time. I have made some Oni King Jormungand games work, but for the most part it's not super exciting, and Oni King now backed up with like picking up early friendly spirits and then buffing up those friendly spirits with Oni King could certainly be a interesting build path when you are level 5. Oni King definitely felt before like it was something that was strong early on in tier 6, but fell off quickly after. One of the other reasons that Oni King is awkward is because it's kind of a support unit. It is a supporting unit, but you also want to play support units, and then you also want to play ranged units, and it just can make these things a little bit more awkward. But there's definitely ways to make Oni King work, and I think that this will overall make it stronger, and we'll see how that works. But it's always interesting to see them trying some things out. Monsters are back on the menu. Yeah, it'll definitely give you a little bit more of a direction to play in monsters. I've said this before, but what I really think evil strategies need, though monster is both evil and good, because Friendly Spirit is one of the best monsters, and then there's also like Jormungand, Grimsoul. There needs to be a little bit more in the treasures department, and I don't know exactly what that is, but the fact that this is a tier 5 does mean that it gets to pick up better treasures as well, because tier 5 treasures are typically better with evil and monster strategies, other than like Spear of Achilles, but you don't need Spear if you're playing Oni King. I mean, it's good, but it's the same thing. We are also going to see a brand new unit, and the patch notes is my first time seeing this. I did not catch any glimpse of this on the beta. Not sure if it was on there, but Gingerbread Knight, I love this. This is absolutely great. Awesome artwork as well. Plus, it's a 4-cost 7/7. It's a 14/14 if you have 20 or less health, which also means that when you triple it, it's going to be a 28/28. I'd like to see one small change to this. It's like a programming thing. If they can make it work, make it that if you have lost 20 or more health, which allows it to play slightly better with some of those weaker heroes, like it plays a little bit better with Morgana and Mordred and Beauty, because it's harder to activate Gingerbread Knight on those other heroes. But I really love comeback mechanics, and I think that putting comeback mechanics on characters is a really sweet way to go, and this seems like a sweet spot, this Gingerbread Knight, no pun intended. So I really like Gingerbread Knight. Think that you're going to ignore it most of the time, but we also see it is a new prince, and it's a new prince that costs 4. That's what I was talking about. There's a lot of princesses and princes on tier 4, and this can certainly slide into the comp. If you get to tier 4 and you're like, oh shoot, I'm really falling behind, you're grabbing some Romeos plus Juliets because they're good stats, and you grab some Gingerbread Knights because they're good stats, and then all of a sudden you get a Sky Castle, well then you've got the means to turn the game around. So I think that that definitely provides a really clear build path as well, and this is fun. I really like comeback mechanics. I do think that this is going to be a powerful unit for the players that need it, in the games that need it. And it's going to be sweet. There is some, interesting stuff here with the fact that the life total matters, but we'll see how that plays out on the patch. But I'm excited for that one. And this one is, I won't say I'm not excited for Burning Tree, but I'm a little bit afraid of this evil tree here. Burning Tree seems really, really busted good to me. Bonuses to my attack also add to my health. So it's a doubly, like I was talking about before. Not for all stats, but for any attack-based stat. So I'm pretty sure that's going to cover everything. That's going to cover temporary stats, like a Friendly Spirit. That's going to cover something like, I'm blanking on the name of the tree support, but any support works. like Sporko is pretty good with this, and Sporko's already something that's pretty good. Specifically, I'm thinking about the tree that scales. Is it called Heartwood Elder? It must be. The 4-cost tree that gives support +2/+2 to trees. It's going to be very good with that because it's going to give +2/+4. And I think it's going to give +2/+4 every single turn. So that is going to be pretty strong. It's also obviously going to be pretty insane with Ashwood. I think Burning Tree is really, really good, and at $5.20, I think that it is something you can just purchase. You can slide it into other comps pretty naturally. If you support this with a Sporko, it is a 10.25 if you're giving it +5 attack. And then I think it's also going to be pivot worthy. I think that if you True Love's Kiss or otherwise like polywoggle into this in the early game, it is a reason to pursue trees, which is something that's definitely fine if you want trees to be good. I think that trees has some other strengths to it once you get to tier 6 on like some units like APOC or just buying XP, something like Skip. I think that my video that I put out this morning was a really good example of when to take trees. No, not this morning. I did put out a tree game this morning, but that was just kind of incidental, just because I bought an Ashwood Elm. But same thing, it's going to be reasonable to just pick this up as soon as you hit tier 5 if you can find it early, or if you can find it late and you've got the right supports for it, or if you can find it really late and you already have the tree build. Burning Tree is definitely going to be a way to go. So I do think that this is going to be really good and really strong. The only issue, well, I won't say issue because I do think that it's strong, but I do have an issue here. Treants died on the vine a little bit once Shoulder Fairy stopped working with Echo Wood. There was no acknowledgement in the last patch or in this one that one of the huge hits to trees was also that Shoulder Fairies doesn't work with Ashwood Elm, and that was the huge hit to trees. The fact that you couldn't just buy Shoulder Fairies anymore really hurt the power of trees because it just kind of took 2 units out of the pool for trees, and this one adds a huge unit back. I think that it's also really good because it's flexible. You can use this as your way into trees as well, in a way that previously really only Ashwood allowed for you because that was the big supporting unit, but this can now really incentivize you to pick up some other synergies. So I think Burning Tree is definitely something you're going to want to look for in your lobbies. Time Flies is a cute new little unit based probably around the pun of, hey, we want to make some time flies. I'm not sure. It's not a totally like flavorful design, but it's a cute design. It is an animal that summons from your hand similar to Mordred. Whenever your first thing dies, you summon your time flies from your hand. So if you have multiple time flies, you can summon up to 4 time flies per combat. There's actually a way to get slightly more potentially. It's a really weird interaction, but Ogre Princess can add time flies to your hand, which can then summon in that same combat. So pretty cool. That was something I just saw on the Discord forum, but that's going to be a very specific use case. The main reason for time flies is now it allows you to play additional units, additional summons, which is definitely going to be helpful for things like Bearstain and things like Hippo and other things that care about summoning. It doesn't have any alignment. It is a neutral animal, and that is going to be holding it back in power a little bit in terms of the things that it can synergize with. Like, it's not like your good boy dies and then you summon the time flies and it gets the good boy buff, but it will get the buff from Bearstain, Geppetto, Summoning Portal, and other things like that. So time flies is pretty cool. I think, and it's also just going to be good with something like Sporko or Madmim, you know, other things that are increasing attack and that summons are naturally otherwise good with. So it's a cool unit. It's interesting design space. A lot of the weird things that you can do with Mordred, you can also do with this. It will also work with Reduplicator as well. And I have heard that at least on the beta, it worked with the Arc. I believe it will not contribute to activating the Arc. So the Arc says you have to have 1 unit of each cost. So it won't count as your 5 cost if it's in your hand, but if you activate the Arc, it does get to count as one of your starting characters and come in as a 15/15 instead of a 3/3. And then obviously whatever other bonuses that you can add to it through like spells or something like that will still work. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of interesting potential with Time Flies. I'll let you guys figure out some of the other things that you can do with it too, as I am now just thinking of some more fun stuff that you can do with it. But yeah, this will be a fun one. I like things that, you know, very simple text box here, but very mechanically deep in terms of what that can interact with. So pretty cool stuff. Feasting Dragon is another new unit, another 5-cost unit. Feasting Dragon, slay for the rest of your game. Characters in your shop have +1/+1. So effectively a fairy tale each time it gets to slay. This could be really cool. There's a lot of fun potential if you get in a huge slay with a big Baba Yaga. I think that something like this probably works better in the Brave Princess, Adventurer slot, meaning that something that has low stats and is something that you can pick up cheap in the early game, kind of like a Polywoggle or a Kitty Cutpurse. But I guess we don't want too many of those types of effects, and it can really get out of hand, so it could be scary. I think that oftentimes you're not going to want to pick up the Feasting Dragon. Problem is, like, you're going to spend 5 gold on it, maybe you get 2 slays out of it, and that is worth, like, it's a double gingerbread party, but it's not the best thing to be spending your coin on, I don't think. Interestingly, it is a dragon. There's only 1 dragon-related treasure, though, so it's not super worthwhile. And ultimately, I think Feasting Dragon is going to fall a little bit flat, but it could be one of the best units. I know that I just said that the Burning Tree is going to be really good to True Love's Kiss into. Feasting Dragon might be one of the new best units to get early on in the game, and I'm sure we'll see some videos like that from me in the future, like, 4.0 Feasting Dragon, get it off a Polywoggle, or get it off some early True Love's Kisses from Potion Master, something like that, and then just make everything in my entire shop way too big. What's kind of interesting, because it doesn't pump itself, it's one of the few late game slay creatures that doesn't scale itself, but it kind of does in a really weird way. It would be quite gold intensive, but Feasting Dragon is going to make future Feasting Dragons that you find have more stats. So in that way, Feasting Dragon could potentially be a good unit if you're able to get it early, slay a few times early, and then use that to pick up bigger Feasting Dragons. Basically, as soon as you find your next one, you actually play the one that you just bought, which is different from, like, Chupacabra. You keep the one in that is already slayed a few times, or Vampire. You keep the one in that's already, like, a 10/10, and then you keep the 5/5 on the bench. In this case, you're going to be purchasing a 15/11, so you pop that in, and then you could potentially sell your benched Feasting Dragon, or you could just try to triple it and start giving everything in your shop +2/+2. It's not going to be, like, super useful, but it does have some kind of backdoor scaling built into it, and it's kind of cute. It is also a dragon, like I said. To be honest, I don't like that it's a dragon because it doesn't have the same mechanical identity as the other dragons, and that's something that I'm a big proponent of when you are making tribal work in these different games. One clear example from another game, I would say, is pirates in Hearthstone Battlegrounds, caring so much about gold. And then you look at how beasts are handled in Battlegrounds, and it's a lot to do with last breaths. And this has nothing to do with anything else that the other dragons are trying to do, though. It could pump up your Doom Breath so that when you hit level 6, you can buy a big Doom Breath and start playing that instead. But interesting stuff here with the Feasting Dragon. That is all of the new characters. Yes, let's look at some changes to existing heroes. The first is going to be a change to Pan's Shadow, and this is a really, really good one. Pan's Shadow was oftentimes pretty awkward, made more so by the fact that sometimes you just didn't see evil characters. That felt absolutely terrible. Now Pan's Shadow has no mechanical identity tied to evil and is now, in a really, really awesome way, A+ thumbs up to the devs on this one. It's the opposite of Peter Pants. Peter Pants only seeing tier 2 and tier 3 units. Pan's Shadow, I'm actually just realizing this right now, but Pan's Shadow is the total opposite of that. It is a Staff of the Old Toad. Once you reach level 4, you never get younger or something. You're an adult now. I want to see a alt art for Pan's Shadow where he's just like wearing a suit and tie and is adulting, or maybe it's two Pan's Shadows standing on each other's shoulders or something. But basically, once you reach level 4, you get a Staff of the Old Toad. This is going to be a really sweet hero to dream into. It is going to just be a really strong hero overall. It does mean that you really have to pay attention to some of those things that you might want in the early game. You might want to just have a doubly and have a Shadow Assassin just in case you go into some of those other comps. But once you reach level 4, you're no longer going to see level 2 or level 3 characters, which is really cool and going to be really strong. It's also good with XP in the early game too, because you're immediately going to find those level 4s. Now, it can make things a little bit awkward on the econ side of things because you might not be able to use your gold super efficiently once you level up. Like if you have 7 gold and you're on level 4, well, I guess you can buy 2 things. You just got to sell something else that you already have. But really, really cool is this Pan's Shadow. I think it is also going to be busted good, especially with the Riverwash Mermaid Jormungand comp that currently exists with those lightning dragons. That's the one reason I said you might want to pick up a Shadow Assassin when you are still level 3 on Pan's Shadow. But I think this is going to be one of the best heroes in the new patch from basically unplayable. We'll see how that goes, but I've really been enjoying Staff of the Old Toad, and getting to play with Staff of the Old Toad and then still getting to play 3 other treasures sounds fantastic to me. It means you can play the Horn, means you can play the Evil Eye, and you can still find something else to do. I don't even know what that would be. That's pretty interesting. What would you want if you could have another treasure because you get to play a free Staff of the Old Toad? We'll see. We'll see what everybody can come up with. So this one is really cool. And another really exciting one, the Fates, is getting a huge, huge upgrade. Your upgraded characters are ironically getting a downgrade. Your upgraded characters are now only getting +3/+3, but Fates has a brand new ability that is making it really exciting and dynamic to play with, especially as a free hero. And this is something that I've even heard some players say, well, is this too cool to put on a free hero? And honestly, it might be. I think Fates just went from one of the least exciting heroes to maybe the most exciting free hero. I mean, with the Merlin nerf recently, Merlin is not that exciting, and Fates is now really cool. So I'll read the text and describe it a little bit, but the first character you buy is destined to upgrade. So let's see if they explained it here. The Fates is another hero we wanted to give a little love. The bonus is now smaller, but the first character that you buy will continue to show up in your shop until you've tripled it. So you're going to have to make a decision as Fates on turn 1. And this is going to give a pretty similar feel to somebody like Gwen with some changes. You're going to have to spend the gold to upgrade said units, but you are going to get a treasure from it, and you also don't have to upgrade it right away. And one thing that was said by a commenter a decent long time ago, and I'm sorry I can't remember. I'll try to throw it up on the screen here if I can search and find out the exact comment. But they said they wanted to see a Fates Humpty Dumpty game. And I thought that was a pretty cool idea. That is now not only going to be possible, but it is going to be insanely strong. Part of this is up to chance. You're going to have to pick between one of the 3 units that you see in that opening shop. Or are you? I don't think it's going to be crazy to see high-level players use 2 or 3 gold from Fates on the first turn just to roll and try to find a good character that they can upgrade. And some of these things are going to be stronger than others. I'm not sure how it works with questing units. I'm pretty sure it just doesn't. So if you pick up a Cindy, I'm pretty sure it just doesn't work. But it will definitely work out well with Lonely Prince. If you can find a good Lonely Prince in the opening shop, it means that you get to find a pair. You're not fated to find the princess, but you'll be able to grab a 10-10 pretty shortly. And then obviously, like I've been hinting at, it's going to be really, really good with Humpty Dumpty. And in a way that I don't think is, maybe you're not even fully realizing, because you can buy that Humpty Dumpty. If in some crazy case your egg gets cracked in one of those first few turns, you get to buy another one. And you get to just continually be powerful in that early game, and then eventually you get to upgrade that Humpty Dumpty, get the Easter egg treasure. Now all of a sudden your upgrading characters aren't getting +3/+3. They're not getting +5/5, they're getting +6/6. And at that point you've exhausted your hero power, but you've also got a huge egg unit, and you also had a bunch of early game momentum. There's some other kind of cute things that you can do. I have heard some players mention that you could just keep a golden chicken in the shop forever and just buy and sell the golden chicken every turn. And then if you find a hippocampus, then you get to give that hippocampus, basically you get to give the hippocampus +10 health every single turn. And while that might be more meme than something that's good, it's certainly something that I want to try out on a video or on a stream, and I think that'll be fun. I will also eventually now be able to try out the Fates egg strategy that has eluded me for a while because I don't play the Fates too often, and I also don't find the eggs when I do. But now I might be destined to create that Humpty Dumpty video. So really excited for the Fates change. A lot of really interesting stuff that can be done with the Fates. Like I said, you could just spend your first turn rolling. It's also going to be good. It was already good to dream into, but now it's really, really interesting to dream onto, especially with something like the Mask, because you get a fated unit early in the game. I kind of wish that instead of Destined, it just said Fates. But speaking of which, I think that this is such a good change because this is also so good from the flavor perspective. So kudos to whoever came up with the changes for both of these heroes, because they're absolutely fantastic, both from a flavor perspective and from a gameplay perspective. I'm excited to try out both of them. We are going to see one that I am not as excited to try out as well, and that is Evella. Still trying to make Evella work, but this is definitely a start. Your evil characters start with +1 attack. So it's kind of a dancing sword to the Krampus. The new dancing sword change is now just all evils have +1/+1, but your evil characters have +1 attack. It's actually going to be pretty okay in the early game. Obviously, Cruella is leaning pretty hard on, or I just called her Cruella. There you go. I mean, it's leaning pretty hard on the source material of 101 Dalmatians. You sacrifice animals for evil purposes. That is the idea of it, wearing this fox as a scarf here. The problem is, in terms of actually making that work in gameplay, it's always been a little bit awkward. I'm reserving my judgment on this one. Evella, one of the, if not the lowest win rate and lowest placement heroes currently in the game. We can, I don't think I'm going to look at it in this video. I think I've already recorded for enough today, but I'm not sure how much this is going to help it, but it certainly is good to have some additional stuff going on in the early game. It's just such a weird thing that is so tied to flavor. You have to have your animals die first, so you have to play animals and you have to play evil. There are some weird, like there are obviously evil animals that are pretty good, and you can make some things like, I'm kind of forgetting exactly what I want to say. I'm just thinking about the fact that Time Flies will kind of work with this, but Time Flies won't get pumped, so it's just a 3/3 that gives the rest of your team +1 attack. I mean, it's something, but it is not everything, and certainly the least exciting hero change that is offered in this patch, with Fates probably being the most exciting, but Pan's Shadow probably just being the most powerful. But Fates is pretty cool. I'm excited to try that out and make some fun games happen. We're going to see new art for Shepard's Sling. This is pretty cool. I don't really remember what the old art was for it, but this one's cool. It's just like on the tool belt, just like this, or tool wall here, just this magical staff. So this one's kind of cute. Wand of Weirding, I think it's fine. This one's probably a side grade, to be honest. I'm not really here to critique the art, though, to be honest, but I do have to say, I think that Shoulder Fairies got a downgrade. I think that Shoulder Fairies had one of the cooler arts in the game before this, and this one feels like we went from a, like, I don't know, more detailed art to one that is a little bit more cartoony. I don't know. I'm not super into it, but it's fine. No shade to the artist or anything. Just in terms of so what Shoulder Fairies is actually representing in terms of what it's referencing is the devil on your shoulder and the angel on your shoulder. And this is just two fairies flying around. I don't really get the shoulder, the symmetrical part of it. And that was something that I did like from the old Shoulder Fairies art as well. Some new features. There is a new tutorial in the game with Shopkeeper VO. Haven't checked this out at all. Fail feedback. I haven't actually looked at any of these things. Like I said, I never actually played on the beta. Just heard people talking about them. We are going to have to reserve our judgment until we actually see them ourselves. But it's going to make it very obvious over the next week or so that I am uploading old content. Because I still have a lot of really sweet games that I want to get out from the past patch. So I will try to get out my best videos from the past like week or two and boil that down. I'll probably rush out like a whole bunch of content because obviously, we've got some new stuff to deal with, but it is going to be painfully obvious when I'm using the old attack animations and screen shakes and stuff like that. Among these, I've heard that your mileage may vary on actually all three of these things, and it's a work in progress. We're still figuring it out here, and I'm sure that there are ways to give your feedback on the official forums, and I'm sure that they will hear that feedback. One thing that I'll say is change is always scary, so give it a week or two and really feel out what you like or don't like about the new system and the old system. But this one, I think everybody is excited about. Oh, and this one too. I did not realize this was coming. Okay, I'll talk more about that in a second. But the treasure replace UI, you're going to be able to see your new treasures and see your existing treasures at the same time, I believe. And it's going to just be a lot easier for everybody, especially if you're like not paying as much attention to the game, to not have to like hide and look back at the treasures and be able to remember what treasures you have. Certainly better for some newer players that can't recognize all the treasures by the art. This is going to be a welcome inclusion, and this is kind of the opposite. This is kind of a nice little tip for the hardcore players, but it's something that you'll probably want to get used to. So this was something that we saw a long time ago in Teamfight Tactics, and they actually removed it from the game to streamline the mobile version of the game and the PC version of the game, the Steam version. Interestingly, I think it was a really interesting move when I heard that they were thinking about adding this to Storybook Brawl, because it's going to take some of the fire out of the mobile release, but we'll see how this develops down the line. But basically, there are now key bindings to different things that you can do in the shop. So you can do Control or L to lock, and spacebar or R, a little bit of a tongue twister there, to roll. And those are going to really be useful on Hatball turns and Holy Grail turns in a way that is going to make playing on the PC a lot better than playing on mobile, though we're still a few months out on the mobile experience. Maybe with a touchpad, it all about evens out, because you don't have to worry about, mouse-specific mouse movement and stuff. But I'm excited with this. I'm excited to try this out. I do think they need to... Yeah. So they're gonna add custom bindings in the future. They probably need to add the ability to turn it off as well, just in case somebody accidentally does that. And, I mean, I don't know how often people are doing that, but it would be bad to roll just because you accidentally hit the biggest button on your keyboard, just because the spacebar is so big. But custom bindings is definitely going to be interesting. I'm going to be playing out, or trying it out a lot on stream. I don't... I think this will be a fun one. And custom bindings, we could also eventually see like 1 through 9 to be able to purchase the shop. Kind of crazy, but it's definitely possible in the future. That would probably require additional UI as well. But I'm excited just to make Holy Grail turns that much easier. Though with ease also means that you are widening that APM gap. I know that one thing that players like about, specifically like take an asynchronous auto battler like Super Auto Pets, there is no dexterity required in Super Auto Pets. Now we're kind of adding that to Storybook Brawl in a way, though it's always been there, making it feel a little bit more like a video game in that sense, in that you could misclick. You could more easily make mistakes in different and interesting ways, which I'm all for. I think that's fun and fun content, but is certainly going to widen gaps in some areas, specifically accessibility. However, mobile provides some additional accessibility, and more ways to play is never going to hurt anyone. You understand what I'm getting at. There's certainly something to be said for players that want to just play a strategy game. And now Storybook Brawl is very much not that. It is much more real-time strategy in that way. Specifically on those half ball turns and the timed clock and the Holy Grail. It's really big for Holy Grail, but on that subject, and I know I'm saying a lot about a very small thing, but this is going to be huge. This is going to change the way that we play Storybook Brawl. I would love to see the stats on Holy Grail, and maybe that's something I'll talk to some of the Storybook Brawl tracker guys about. I think that Holy Grail is like, what is the percent that you get first place on a game where you Holy Grail? Honestly, it's probably something like 80-90%. It does seem very high. I think I win most of my games where I get to Holy Grail. But they don't feel that satisfying. It always feels like, man, I just didn't do enough. There was so much more that I could have done. And being able to just two-hand it is going to be so good. Because now I'm moving around this mouse while I am rolling with my spacebar. And that's pretty cool. That's going to make Holy Grail feel a lot better, I think. Even though it might not to. It might not need to. Holy Grail might already be too good, but we'll see how that plays out. I will touch on the bug fixes and improvements briefly because there's actually some big stuff in here this time. So just more changes to network logic. Great, love to see it. King Midas used to be terrible with treasure map and runestones. That is patched out. Great, love to see it. It was terrible before. Now you can actually take these treasures. It used to just consume them for absolutely nothing. Fixed a bug where if you were Sharon or had Coin of Sharon, Trojan Donkey could eat those buffs. I'd never seen that. Maybe that's a result of not playing enough Trojan Donkey. It's a small thing. One thing that they don't have here that I would like to see is most Last Breath units work with Sharon and Coin of Sharon. Mummy and Friendly Spirit both work with it in that their trigger gets to count for the fact, and Good Boy, their triggers get to count for the fact that the unit is receiving a buff. Tweedle does not. So I would potentially like to get a Tweedle buff this patch, if that is not, or in the next patch, if that's not too much to ask for. So hopefully we see that in the future. This is a big one. You kind of forgot about it eventually if you played enough Storybook Brawl, but on the full screen versus screen, the health totals were always wrong, so that was pretty terrible. And then this one was a weird one. They buffed up Fancy Pants, but for some reason it just wasn't working with Mimic some of the time, and now it is going to. This one is really weird. It's not saying fixed because it wasn't broken. And I don't think I like this. But basically, this is huge. This is the whole reason I'm taking a second to stop down and talk about the bugs. The timing on Shrivel is now different. So I believe this means that Shrivel will now no longer cancel out Lordy. It will no longer kill Echowood, and it will just overall be a much worse spell. I liked the fact previously that Shrivel did work to counter certain comps because otherwise it felt kind of hopeless to play against Echowoods. However, 2 coin to kill an upgraded Echowood against like a fully established Dwarves player was maybe too cheap and maybe unfair. Maybe you got to go for that Piggo if that is what you're really looking for. But this is definitely a downgrade to Shrivel to the point where I'm not even sure if it is really a tier 6 spell at this point because it is really just not super exciting. Shrivel on Tweedle was just a bug. And then this is a funny one because this is one that I've known about for a while. So Summoning Portal, this has literally been in the game for like 2 months and I discovered it. But maybe some other players had discovered it too, but I know that I initially discovered it and brought it to some other people's attention and got the attention of the devs with it as well. But basically, Monster Book contributed to Summoning Portal, and basically spells counted as summons and then ticked up your Summoning Portal numbers and made you do bigger things like that. And it actually was relevant sometimes because you'd have a bunch of monster books die, and then you'd have pumpkins take over. So it was definitely making Summoning Portal really strong in the last patch where pumpkin cost 5. Not as big of a deal now. You don't typically see as much pumpkins and as much Summoning Portals with that because you can't build into it as early, so you can't really decide your treasures that go with it. But it's still something that probably needed to get changed eventually, even though I kind of enjoyed that it was this really super niche thing that basically only I knew about and maybe like 3 other people that were all developers. But regardless, that's out of the game, and that is going to be the end of the patch notes. So let's scroll back up here, and I'm tempted to just keep it on Pan Shadow because that one is good. One small thing on Pan Shadow though, who is Pan? Why are we talking about Pan Shadow? It's Pants Shadow. Oh, which makes it even more perfect that you gotta have that suit and tie. So stay tuned for that suit and tie cosmetic gem that you can pick up in the future. Maybe I will DM a dev about that and say, call it Pants Shadow and give us a suit and tie cosmetic. Especially now that it's a good hero, we could definitely see a cosmetic for it in the future. But that's going to be it for me for this video. Thank you guys very much for watching. Have fun with the new patch. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.